Medical, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Rob Berman, CEO and board member. Take it away. Let's get this thing started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to see you. I'm glad to see the room so full.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to take lots of questions.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. I guess let's maybe quickly, just for those that may be listening and aren't familiar with the story, just give us like a 5,000-foot view of what you're doing and how you're differentiated amongst other companies out there.
Sure. We have a device that treats a condition called chronic venous insufficiency. In a nutshell, the way the blood gets back to your heart and lungs to get reoxygenated, people think that the heart circulates the blood on the way back too. It doesn't work that way from your lower leg. The way blood gets back to your heart and lungs from your lower leg is your calf muscle actually serves as the pump. So that's why they tell you when you sit too long to get up and walk. Because when you get up and walk and put pressure on your leg, you're flexing your calf muscle and it's pushing the blood up the veins against gravity. In the veins of the leg are a series of one-way valves. So I like to picture it as if you have a ladder going from below your waist to the top of your foot, running down the center core of your leg. And in a healthy person, the blood climbs from rung to rung to rung, up your leg against gravity to get back to the heart and lungs. Mostly in people that have had a blood clot that they may or may not know that they've had, it's called a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis, those veins become diseased over time and they become fibrotic. When that happens, the valves inside of the leg, veins, don't work properly. So getting back to my ladder analogy, if you're climbing a ladder and a rung breaks, what happens? You fall to the ground. The same thing happens to the blood in your leg. The calf muscle pushes it up, but if the valves don't hold, the blood flows back down in the opposite direction, which in the medical community we call reflux. So you have pooling blood in your lower leg with nowhere to go. So the leg swells up 2 to 3 times the size of your other leg. The pressure inside of the veins goes up dramatically because you have this blood with nowhere to go. So the condition is called chronic venous insufficiency. It's called that because insufficient blood is returning to the heart and lungs from the leg. About 2.5 to 3.5 million people in the US have deep venous CVI, and the current standard of care is what Jeff was just doing. Literally go home and put your legs up so the blood runs out of your legs like that, or try to wear compression stockings. But if you think about it, how tightly would you have to squeeze your leg to get to the vein, not under the skin, but the vein that's deep within the leg? It's impossible. So compression stockings don't work. So we have a valve that gets surgically implanted in the thigh area. That is a first-in-class device. And we did a small first-in-human study, 11 patients. And those patients went from having very severe CVI, chronic venous insufficiency, to having a much more mild form of the disease or no disease at all. And so the FDA approved our IDE. We are in the middle of a US pivotal trial, 20 sites across the US. If you go to venovalve.com and you scroll to the bottom, you'll see NYU, Yale, Houston Methodist, Miami Baptist, the best cream of the crop vascular programs in the country, because this is a big deal. They've been trying to cure this disease for 40 to 50 years without progress. And so we are in the middle of our pivotal trial, and last week we announced the second product for the treatment of CVI, which is a transcatheter-based valve. So it is a valve that won't be implanted via a surgical procedure. It'll be implanted via a catheter inserted through the back of the knee. So we were fortunate enough to raise $62 million in 2021, including a $20 million investment from Perceptive Advisors. And so we are well capitalized. And how's that for a intro?
Very comprehensive.
You
Thank
know, milestones that are coming.
Yes.
What about the milestones?
Very
I'll tell you about the milestones. The guidance we've given the street is that we will be fully enrolled by end of Q1 of 23. The primary endpoints in the study are 6 months. So we're talking about pivotal trial data end of 23. The FDA wants 1 year data to support our PMA application. So following that all the way through, we're talking PMA approval Q4 of 24 or Q1 of 25. So if you're looking for companies that are well-funded, undervalued, with good upside, not flavor of the week, what's going to triple in 60 days, but good fundamental companies that have significant milestones coming in 2023, that's who we are, I think.
Got it.
Somebody's doorbell's ringing.
Yeah, that's funny. So I guess let's go back to your trial.
Okay.
Right, with COVID and all the chaos at the hospitals and sites we're seeing, there's been some slowdown in enrollment of trials and a lot of complications there. Are you seeing that, and what are you doing to combat it?
Yeah, I mean, look, 2.5 million people in the U.S. have this disease, and the standard of care is go home, put your legs up, or wear compression stockings. So you wouldn't think that enrollment would be a problem. We're enrolling a little bit slower than we anticipated, and so we needed to find out why. And so the first thing that we did is I started visiting the sites. And I visited, I think, 16 sites in 30 days, including 4 sites in a week. Detroit, I'm thinking about my Ohio tour. Toledo, Cincinnati, Detroit, and Cleveland in the same week, driving across the state of Ohio. Anybody know what Avon, Ohio is known for? It is the duct tape capital of the world. And I know that because I drove across Ohio. And so the first thing was to go to the sites and listen and observe, to think about, what's going on here. And the clinical departments of hospitals are so overwhelmed right now, post-COVID, that clinical coordinators are leaving left and right. It doesn't matter if it's NYU or if it's Yale or any of our hospitals. And so you've got coordinators that were handling 15 trials that are now handling 30. And so that's what we observed, that they're just trying to keep their heads above water. So then you say to yourself, okay, what do we do about that? Because we're a company that likes to figure out the problem and solve the problem. We're not just waving our hands in the air saying, oh, enrollment's slow, so we'll just, wait. First of all, you need to think about how you can make your trial stand out from the 30 trials that the coordinator's working, right? Well, how about the CEO stopping by and meeting the coordinator and thanking them, right? How many, I wonder, of those 30 companies whose trials they're handling, how many CEOs actually came by? So that's number one, a good thing to do. We have increased the number of sites. So we went back to the FDA and got permission to do, originally we got 20, we got permission to do another 10 so that I can swap out sites that are not doing well with sites that are going to do better, hopefully. We hired a VP of clinical, who is a 23-year veteran in Medtronic who started 4 weeks ago. And the first week in October, I have 3 clinical technologists starting. And each technologist will be assigned to 5 sites. And they will be there to help the sites, right? If people are overworked and they can't get to their work, why not provide people that can help them?
Right.
So we need more boots on the ground. And so those people are starting first week in October. And so has it made a difference? I think my trip was in June. August was our biggest enrollment month, and September was bigger than that. So it certainly seems to be trending up. But it's a very challenging environment now to get anything done in hospitals. It just is. And so, but look, this is a field that we are going to be in for many years, right? There's this trial, there's going to be a post-approval trial. We have the second product that I mentioned that we announced last week. We are going to be doing clinical work for a long time. So we need to figure out the best way to navigate through the landscape because we're going to be there for a while, and that's what we're doing.
Excellent. Okay. And I guess secondly, VenoValve is a first-in-class device. So what are the advantages and maybe disadvantages of that?
So let's talk about the advantages first. You know, we will likely be the only company selling a device with an addressable market of 2.5 to 3.5 million people in the US. And in addition to our IP protection, we are going through a PMA approval process. That's the most stringent approval process that you go through, excuse me, with a medical device. And anybody else that comes out with a product is going to have to go through the same regulatory process. So we have what's called a moat that we're building, and we're going to have a huge head start. That's the advantage. That's the positive, and that's a big positive. On the downside, whenever you do something for the first time, particularly in a highly regulated industry like medical device, it's a lot of work. It's like pushing a rock uphill, is what I say. I mean, you have to educate, right? Honestly, the FDA didn't know much about valves and veins. Nobody's ever had a product for valves and veins. So, you know, they know about heart valves, but they don't know about venous valves. I was on the phone with CMS 3 weeks ago, and I was talking to them about how to classify our product, our device. And we want to classify it as a replacement device because it's in essence replacing the valves in your veins. They said, we can't do that. Really, why? Because we have no body part called a venous valve in our, you know, glossary of body parts. I mean, so everything you do for the first time, when you do testing, you need to come up with your own parameters and then convince the FDA that those parameters are the right ones to use. So it's challenging. It's challenging and will be challenging reimbursement-wise. We got a new CPT code, our own, you know, for the device. I mean, there's really a lot of groundwork that you need to do. And so you have to say to yourself, is it worth it? And with a greenfield opportunity to be the only player in a very large market for quite a few years, I think it is.
Got it. I agree. So let's kind of transition to nv, which is the new product that you announced is kind of in development or late stage development.
Yes.
Let's start with how is it different? Because it's almost entirely different from the VenoValve.
Yeah. So the VenoValve is a surgical product that gets implanted into the femoral vein. And most devices, you want to start out as a surgical product because you want to prove that the device works. And you don't want to have to worry about all the other things that come into play in making a device that could shrink down and fit in a catheter and then self-expand. And so if you look historically at medical devices, whether it's heart valves, whether it's stents, right? All of them started as surgical procedures and then over time transitioned to transcatheter. And so we deliberately started with a surgical valve. Now, we believe that when we have success with the veno valve and when we start making a lot of money, people will notice, because that always happens. And others will look to enter the market. And one strategy might be to try and fend off those other people with our surgical valves, but we anticipate that a lot of those new market entrants are going to try and enter with transcatheter valves. So instead of taking one product and trying to fend off the newer innovation, why not innovate it ourselves? I mean, we have a very valuable asset. We have 5 years of experience working in the veins that nobody else has. The best way to leverage that asset was to develop another product. And so we want to being the first is great, but it's not enough. We want to dominate the market, and we want to dominate the market with both surgical valves and non-surgical valves. You know, the example that I think of is BlackBerry. Did you have a BlackBerry, or you're too young to have a BlackBerry? Jeff had a BlackBerry. Okay. So, right, BlackBerry, you guys know, right? They had a device that was bulletproof. That was a great device that a lot of us had, and broad adoption, but they made 3 mistakes. One was they got involved in that patent dispute, if you remember, and they wanted to stand on ceremony that they were right, and so they didn't enter into a license, and that caused them a lot of problems. But 2 other mistakes that they made. They didn't continue to innovate. And number 2, they didn't predict where the market was going. The market was going to people's demand to have a whole computer in their hand. And what BlackBerry said is, why would somebody want a computer in their hand? We're just going to stick to texting and emails. And so that opened the door for Apple and Samsung, who moved in and took over that market. Think of the veno valve as the BlackBerry, right? Broad adoption, solid product, but we want to be Apple and Samsung also. And so that's why we're going to bring nv, our transcatheter-based device, to market as well.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does. And talk to me about timing with nv. Why now?
Because we have the capital, and it takes a long time to get these products through. You know, it's about 2 years behind. You know, the veno valve will be ready for commercialization, hopefully, you know, with FDA approval beginning of 25. nv's probably 2 years behind that.
Okay.
So it takes a long time to develop these products. A lot of times they don't work perfectly out of the chute, and you need to tweak them, and you need to, you know, do different things. So it takes time. We have the time, and we have the capital.
Right, but you did see some advantages from having all that information from the veno valve, because the development of nv was how much quicker?
100%. We developed it in about a year.
Right, compared to.
But without the knowledge of the veno valve, I mean, we basically took the best qualities of the veno valve and transferred them to nv, and then shored up some of the weaknesses of the veno valve. We didn't just take the veno valve and make it flexible and shrinkable. It is a similar design, but a different design for nv. You know, I like to use analogies, so sorry about that. But the analogy for surgical versus transcatheter is surgery is like you're building a big model sailing ship that's very intricate, but you have a lot of room and a lot of space. And transcatheter is like you're building that same ship, but within a bottle. And that's sort of the analogy. You've got a lot to do in a small space. Right. So it raises its own challenges.
Got it. And this development, it doesn't require additional capital. This has been budgeted.
Yeah. So the first in human development that we're doing doesn't require, it's within our budget. So we gave guidance that we're capitalized through the end of 2024, and that included the first in human development for NV. To do the pivotal trial, we will need to raise capital, but that will come after our data comes out for the veno valve, which will hopefully enable us to do that.
Got it. Okay. And then before I circle back to some questions, hopefully I'll have time regarding the trial.
4 minutes? Okay.
4 minutes?
4 minutes for us or for the whole questions too? For us.
Us.
Gotcha. That means keep going. Okay, gotcha.
All right, well, okay.
Ask a
I
question.
guess in this, I know, I'm slow talker. Can you tell us something or tell us a few details that maybe you couldn't find in the deck? We can all go through your corporate presentation, but what are some things that you're hearing that maybe aren't captured there?
Doctors like using our device. And you can develop a good device that treats a condition, but if doctors don't like using it, they're not going to use it. Now we have an advantage here. We don't have to convince doctors to stop using the device that they've been using for the last 10 years, which is often hard to do because there is no presumptive device. But doctors like using the device. And if you can put up our second slide, okay, this was tweeted out by our PI at Utah. This patient here had a venous ulcer on her leg for 5 years. I mean, when you have an ulcer on your leg, it hurts when you walk, it hurts when you sleep, you can't shower if you've got wrap on it. I mean, this is a debilitating condition. And she had veno valve surgery and came in for her 30-day visit, and if the tweet is correct, the ulcer was fully healed in 30 days. That's amazing. This device will change people's lives. People who have no effective treatments now. And so it's, we all want to make money. We all want the stock to go up, lots of things. But when you can do that and make this much of a difference in patients' lives, it's really a blessing.
Excellent. Quickly, any questions from our audience? They're ready with the microphone. Yes, Jeffrey.
Oh, what a surprise, Jeff.
Just a quick one, Rob. Just hypothesize with us how might this play out down the road? Because I know that a lot of these procedures, surgical procedures, are being done in the cath lab in the hospital, but yet a lot of the aesthetic type outpatient procedures are being done in vein clinics, et cetera. So if or when you're in the hospital, how might a portion of that migrate out of the hospital with your next gen device?
Yeah, we think that NV, our transcatheter valve, will be done in an angio lab. And so you won't need an OR and you won't need general anesthesia. Most of the procedures in our trial for the veno valve are being done under general. That's not our requirement, by the way. That's what the anesthesiologist chooses. But NV will be a light sedation done in an angio lab as opposed to an OR. I have a question. I've talked to you now for several years. You've actually probably know the most about this company because you remember when we were struggling and trying to get off the mat, and I think we've come a long way. But you've said to me that if somebody calls and asks, what company should I look at? You usually mention us first. My question is, do you say that to all the companies? Which it's okay if you do. It's okay if you do, I get it. But what do you think, right? You see all of these companies in the space. What do you think differentiates us from, not mentioning any names, but a lot of other companies that you see?
Okay, well, firstly, I don't say that about everyone, just to clear the air there. But I believe that your company sticks to your timelines. You don't set unrealistic expectations. Your device is treating a condition where there's absolutely nothing, literally nothing. And even whatever they are using, it's not truly treating the problem. It's helping a symptom. And I think that a lot of the companies, out there can't necessarily say the same thing. So.
Yeah, we're not a me too. We're not a better version of something that's out there. We're a brand new treatment paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, it's a lot of work to be new, but we think that it's certainly worth the upside.